It's 7 a.m. your time, right?
Yes, 7 a.m. my time.
So we can now say that we're committed to doing this if we're willing to get up at 5 and 6 in the morning, each of our respective times, and be like, we need to record the podcast now.
Yeah, as long as we were up at like 6, it'd be fine. Then we could definitely do it in the morning.
Yeah, we're definitely committed. So if you're good, I'm good, sir.
I'm good, man.
Cool. All right, let's hop right into this and do the normal and say welcome. Welcome on in, folks. For those who do not know, my name is Guest, also known as ItsGuestGaming. I'm woken up here by this hairy gentleman, DefaultDan. Good morning, because it's really early for us. How you doing, good sir?
It is. It's super early, but you know what? I'm enjoying it. We're going to be going through this, talking about all this cool, good, awesome Snap stuff. I'm sure it'll be good.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff happening right now, and I'm happy to talk about it. So we're going to talk about the OTAs that dropped in the afternoon yesterday, and we have a couple of other unique things I want to talk about. We're also going to dive into what happened on Wednesday night over on the Snap.fan channel for the tournament for Wednesday Night Snap. I want to speak a little bit about the rise of a very specific card that, when released, was kind of just said, okay, sure, that's fun, and now all of a sudden is in the most meta deck in the game at the moment. And along those same lines, I want to dive into your thoughts and my thoughts on cards that we're just straight up sleeping on, like the card we're going to speak about before it, because there could be another card that we are just waiting to break through, and we know what's coming with the rest of the new cards coming up throughout this season, as well as some of the cards in next season. So there might be a couple that we're sleeping on, or just not playing enough, or that we should be, better yet, playing even more. So I want to talk about those because some of them were addressed by the devs in the OTAs yesterday. So I personally am a little bit happy, because I feel like we can, with the mildest bit of ego, and I don't mean the location, like the mildest bit of ego, we can say, you know what, maybe they actually listen to our podcast. Maybe they do, because I called it as a specific buff that I wanted. I wanted to see Orca. You could check the playback. I wanted to see Orca go from a 6/9 with the same effect to a 6/11 to make it more impactful. It's an incredibly low playing card. And sure enough, what's the first one on the OTA changes this week?
That is it, man. That is it. And here's the thing, with him going from a 6/9 to a 6/11, just like we talked about the other day, it makes sense because he has to be by himself. So if, to win a lane, if you think about all of the big cards that come down, or now especially the cards that are just like getting insanely big, with all these cards like Kitty, Angela, things like that, like you're going to need a lot of power to win one lane. And that's kind of what Infinite was built for, if we think about it, right? Skip 5, play 20 on one location. Exactly. And so now you're around that, around that number, 16 power. So I love the change, and I think that this is something that could make Orca kind of start to stand back out, especially in like the Spectrum decks and other things like that, because now you can potentially, if you're ramping in some way, like another ongoing like Electro, you could play him on 5 with Spectrum on 6. So I definitely like this change, and I think that this makes him more playable, still in specific decks, but he's going to look good, especially with some of the other locations like Atlantis.
Yeah, I'm happy, to say the least, because I think that 16 power as a one-turn threat, given the condition that it needs, is ample enough to say that maybe it's playable. 14 power was kind of weak, and 16 power actually feels good. It can compete with a couple of Cerebro decks. It can compete with a couple of meta decks that expect something very specific to happen on turn 6. So I'm quite okay with it. At least I'm okay with it in the sense where it's selfish, because it's an ongoing joke between one of the other content creators that was with me for the Snap.fan broadcasting, Matrim, who was absolutely fantastic and a lot of fun to hang out with. but he has been all about Orca as a meme for a while, and may or may not have convinced me to really enjoy the Pixel Orca. And I may or may not have had it show up in my shop 2 days ago. Got it. And then the OTA on Orca dropped, and I was like, you know what? I'm very happy right now. I'm not gonna lie. I'm extremely happy right now. It is now an animated emote on my Twitch channel. Like it is definitely it's a selfish love. But I actually am gonna try, keyword, to have him in a, hear me out, in a Galactus deck, because we talked about it on the Snapcast with a fake out Galactus deck. And I know Binks has his version out there, but I think Orca now could bring a fun, you think it's Galactus, but nope, it's not. You know, you've left the lane open, you're waiting for it, and then all of a sudden, boom, 16 power Orca when you think you only need like 4 to win. So I think that could be a good deck, maybe, just to kind of shake it up a little bit, you know, because if they're not going to change up Galactus, at least we can. So I'm gonna try that with Orca. That's on the goals for me right now. One of the other things I did this week was I played like almost 100 games with a Nebula Collector deck, and it did very well. And that was when Collector was a 2/1, because he was another one that was buffed in the OTAs. They brought him from a 2/1 that gets the +1 when a card enters your hand from anywhere but your deck, to now being a 2/2. Do you see him becoming relevant again because of this?
I mean, absolutely. The thing is, I don't think this bump matters about if he's relevant or not, in the fact that we're about to get Kitty Pryde back and Collector goes up. Because originally, before, Collector and Kitty Pryde didn't work correctly, but now they will. They'll be fixed. So, you know, the thing is, and I don't want to sound like, hey, Snap just wants our money, but they're doing this because we have the Collector pack out there. I mean, like, it's a buff to Collector. We know that we have Kitty Pryde.
No.
So,
I 1000% disagree with you there. This is nothing to do with the fact that, because if that was the case, we'd get buffs on characters all the time synergetically with packs that come out. And besides, this is the second Collector bundle to have come out, and he didn't get an adjustment or a buff back then also. So I'm gonna shut you down real quick, because I 1000% disagree with you.
Didn't he go from a 2/2? Didn't he go from a 2/2 to a 2/1 a while back? Like, didn't he already get
way back?
Now
he was
just
nerfed.
Going back. So
right, because he was nerfed due to the Devil Dino meta with that. And so they brought him down a little bit, but now they're bringing him back up because people don't play him as that. They play him more with bounce style decks, and there he does need a little bit of a buff. But I don't see this also being a reason to bring back that old meta of Devil Dino, you know, again.
Yeah, well, I think with the change they did to Quinjet, I think when they made that change, they realized there's a lot of things that are no longer as good as they were. And so because of that, they had to say Collector needs one more point, because back in the day, you know, way back in the day, a month ago, you would drop your hood and then you'd have a free demon, right? And that free demon is pumping Collector.
The good old days.
Yeah, and you had a lot of that synergy, right? With cards becoming free. You could have Moon Girl in these bounce type decks. You could have Moon Girl as your top end essentially in a deck, with knowing that Collector's going to get huge. So it's, again, and I'm not saying that they did it specifically for the pack. I'm just saying it is kind of a coincidence. It's there, but I do agree with you. I think he needed that one extra point. But I think it is kind of related to the fact that we are getting Kitty Pryde. We do have kind of these bounce synergies kind of, you know, coming back into the meta with Hitmonkey and things like that. So I think it's a good change. If you look at a lot of the decks, like you mentioned, he's not being played as much in the last couple months. But when we talk about all these cards that are going to be, you know, coming out of nowhere, cards that are maybe being slept on, I don't think he's being slept on, you know, currently, but he's definitely one of those cards that he's about to get really good with Kitty Pryde, Hitmonkey, and that whole bounce meta really taking off, because Kitty Pryde, I think, is the enabler, with them fixing her interaction with him and Beast.
Yeah, I think it's good to say that the Collector is now a little bit more enticing, because even if you have just one group, which is kind of how I was running it a bit, where some games, maybe I got Moon Girl to hit, so he'd go to a 2-5, which is a great stat line. And then some games, maybe I only got to hit one Swarm, where he ends up becoming a 2-4. Okay, still a very good stat line. So for a 2-cost card, going to either 2-4 or 2-5, you don't need a lot to make him relevant on the battlefield.
Right.
So I think that this changes a very big difference if you just take those exact same stats and -1. You know, if he's a 2-3, there are better 2-3 options. If he's a 2-4, there's only a couple of options that might be okay because they have some downside to them. But now to be a 2-4 or a 2-5 or higher with not that much downside, otherwise that's where it's like, you know, thumbs up. I'm quite okay with everything.
And the other thing I'll point out here too, and this is a thumbs up to the devs here, is they did nerf them and then they realized like, hey, that nerf really wasn't needed. Let's put them back. So it just shows us that these OTA changes can be those things where they test it for a little while. And I know the original one wasn't OTA, but it is kind of correlated, right? To where they could test something and go, hey, Orca needs to be this big, right? And then, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 weeks from now, they go, okay, Orca's too big. Let's go to a 6'10", right? So it's definitely one of those things, that they can kind of test. So it is good that this is kind of the first time we're really seeing that of a nerf, but then taking them back exactly where it was, not changing them or anything like that. Just going, okay, the 2-1 wasn't really needed. Let's go back to a 2-2, and then let's see if he's too powerful, you know, and kind of get some data around it. So again, just love these changes. The big thumbs up to the devs and the fact that they're willing to tweak one way or the other just to see, you know, what's going on.
Yeah, it's not an admission
if it's not needed.
Exactly. It's not about it being an admission of being wrong, because that's not what these changes are. It's acknowledgement of the metas in the game and capitalizing on the idea that they have the flexibility now to get rid of things or change things as needed. So you're 100% right on that. That's a great call. And the last one that was adjusted was maybe proof that they don't watch the podcast. And it's because I asked for this to be a nerf, and they made this a buff, and I legitimately don't know why, considering how strong of an effect it will be in the upcoming next few months. It's Luke Cage. They changed him from being a 2-1, where your cards as an ongoing can't have their power reduced, to now being a 2-2.
Yeah, I think this was a mistake.
This is a huge mistake. I get their reasoning. Their reasoning has to do with the potential synergies when it comes to Hazmat and getting that duo to work, and maybe Cerebro too, and the fact that people should be using Luke Cage. They even hinted at it. Did you catch that? They used very specific terminology in the announcement where they talk about Luke Cage, and in the final sentence, they said, the added power makes Luke more viable as a tech card in other decks, which might come in handy if afflict strategies reach a new high in the near future. And that's 100% a hint towards high evolutionary.
You know, they evolve to a new high, you know, state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's why would you buff a card that already can undo so much damage just from being present? Because if anything, it should have gone the other way. That's what I thought.
I think it's definitely one of those things where they're trying to make sure that if this becomes a card that has to go in every deck, and at least the first week of High Evolutionary, this card will need to go in every deck. The moment High Evolutionary goes to Series 4 and Series 3, this card will have to be in every deck. So I think that they're trying to give you a card that you're not going to feel bad putting in, because here's the opposite side of it, right? So coming from Magic, there's certain cards that have to go in your sideboard. If you play, you know, a white deck, a blue deck, whatever it may be, these are the cards that must go in there because they're the only answers to the other cards, the other decks you're going to see. Now, we don't have a sideboard here, so now it has to go in your main deck. And I think that if you told everybody you have to put this 2-0 in your deck because of the meta, which is what we're already seeing a little bit with Shang-Chi, Killmonger, right? There's a few cards where it's like you need one or the other. There's 3 cards that you have to put 2 of these 3 in your deck already. So maybe they're trying to make them look appealing, but I would agree with you by taking them to a 2/2. Another deck that stands out to me is Cerebro 2. So now you're going to have a card in Cerebro 2 that originally the easiest way to mess with Cerebro 2 was either a location that minused or plus, your stuff, right? And the plus is still going to work, but like there was locations where they would minus your stuff and then it would throw your stuff off. There was cards like Spider-Woman and things like that could mess with your cards pretty easily. So I am a little worried. By putting them at a 2, we've now made Cerebro 2 better because there's a lot of good 2 power cards there.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that as someone who has already started experimenting off stream with a Cerebro 2 variation, this is a huge change because I'm already trying to find the best Cerebro 2 deck. I'm doing a Surfer hybrid right now because I still truly feel I'm doing Master Mold. Yeah, Master Mold's in there. Master Mold, Hazmat, etc. I'm calling it C2 for you. And it's trying to capitalize on the fact that Silver Surfer, as much as Brood is great in Cerebro 2, I also think it's just as important to get actual value out of Cerebro and Mystique. So I've been trying a deck with my only 3 cost cards in there are Cerebro, Mystique, and Silver Surfer. Because if you run Silver Surfer and you go across it, you're going to buff up the Cerebro and the Mystique, and then they get the buffs. And typically, when you go up against a Cerebro deck, you're facing the Cerebro line. You're trying to find where Cerebro and Mystique are more often than not and go for those lanes because that's a lane that you're more likely to win because people don't buff up the Cerebro and the Mystique. So I'm trying this a different way. And it's a lot of fun when people don't see that or they don't expect that.
Do you have Blue Marvel? Do you have Blue Marvel in there? Of course.
I have Blue Marvel in there.
Okay. Just making sure. Some people don't realize so like some people don't realize because Blue Marvel's 3, they're like, oh no, he'll take all the stuff. He doesn't. He gives everybody else +1. So now all your 2s or 3s, Cerebro still works. So I was just curious.
Luke Cage is definitely going to fit in brilliantly now in the Cerebro 2 line. And it gives a lot more incentive to, as we talked about previously, the strength of Hazmat in the upcoming few weeks. And now even more so for a Cerebro deck that can run Hazmat now too. There's man. I mean, there's a lot of love for Cerebro players. But at the same time, I still don't know if they're going to be able to keep up. It's a lot of reliance on Luke Cage, but if you get him to pull, it's a very, very strong deck, but it's very reliant on that.
Well, and you're also relying on making sure you get the Cerebro plus Mystique to actually be able to go over the top of a lot of decks. So it's a strong deck when it works. And here's the thing: I was messing around with the Cerebro 2 a few months back when the Thanos meta was up, and the problem was Leech. So you really want to have turn 6 Cerebro plus Mystique. So there's a lot of ways to kind of interact with that wave Leech and things like that. But with the change to Leech, he's kind of fallen out of the meta a little bit right now, which is nice. So it's definitely one of those things where it's possible to go back to those decks. And so with the Luke Cage change, that's kind of my big concern is now we've kind of pumped him up into being able to be part of some of the meta decks and make them a little stronger. But I don't know. We'll have to see what actually happens. I think in general, it's going to be really tough with the high evolutionary decks coming out, the negative inflicting decks, because the Hazmat decks are already really good. And now that you're making Luke Cage not a feel bad card, because he did still feel like a feel bad card because he was a 2/1. And, a 2/0 probably would have been okay in that sense. But pumping them up, I don't know. But I get where they're coming from. So you can put it in any deck and not feel too bad. You're right on curve 2/2 to put something in there. So,
yeah, I think he's more relevant I think you're going to see him a lot more in the next 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks from now, he's going to become the new Shang-Chi. You're going to need him in every single deck. So get ready for that. He is a better tech card. He's not necessarily a fun card. He's just a mandatory card in the upcoming couple of weeks. Unlike our friend Agatha, who got a nice little feature the other night, Wednesday night, with the Snap.fan tournament on Wednesday night. And you want to tell me and kind of, exactly what happened? I was there. I want to see if you were paying attention.
Yes. So just to give everybody, if you're not aware of it, over on the Snap.fan Twitch, so Twitch.tv/Snap.fan, all spelled out one word. Essentially, Wednesdays we have a tournament. It's 4 rounds to play. It's pretty laid back and chill. So you can come in, you can bring whatever kind of deck you want. There is a $100 prize pool at the moment. Hopefully that'll go up over time with sponsors and things like that. But essentially, if you have 4 wins, you get some money. If you have 3 wins, you get some money. And so it was really nice to see people having fun with decks. And GC decided to bring in his Agatha deck because you know what? If he lost, it was Agatha all along and it wasn't his plays. So he brought in Agatha. He brought in Shayna within that deck. And there was some really crazy plays with the way Agatha was being played. It wasn't your average Agatha deck where it was being discarded or anything like that. It only had 1 out to be played. And that was Wave. Outside of that, she stayed in the hand almost the whole time. And I believe, based on the clips that are out there and watching some of the stuff, Agatha was actually making pretty good plays for GC, even though he didn't take down the tournament. She was making some pretty good plays.
I mean, Agatha is let's be honest here. It's got a 30-something% win rate. It is 100% a meme card. It is just for fun. It brings up an interesting point with Agatha specifically. Is she healthy? Because on one end, Agatha's used as a really fun card to be like, let's just kind of see what happens. Woohoo! And then you've got the other end of it, which is the Agatha farm, which is literally what it's called. It's those who run an Agatha deck via a bot to farm boosters and farm pass holder points every single day. They just run the Agatha deck on some kind of automated BS kind of thing, and they just get a whole bunch of experience. Now there's a cap on it. Now, after I think it's 10 hours of gameplay, you no longer get pass holder experience, but that's what people were doing. They're just running the bot in the background. And yes, the game has made bans. They do acknowledge when those do happen, but is it enough? Like, is this a healthy card or does it need to be changed?
I mean, so in the world today, I think it's fine. The reason why I say it's fine is, yes, there's some people abusing the system on it, but I mean, them doing it is not really affecting other players. I'll put it that way, right? So like them running the bot, they're not stealing currency in the game and then reselling said currency on a different market because we don't have any of that stuff. Now, if we had a way of gifting friends our currency, 100% we'd have to take care of it because they're going to make money off of it. There's the argument people make that I've heard of like, oh, well, they're farming accounts and selling accounts. But here's the thing. By the time you get Agatha, you've invested a lot in this game. Not to say you can sell it, but like, I don't think that people are going to spend that much time to create this account. And then on the other side of it, I don't think there's that many people that are going to go, all right, I'm going to spend my money on this account that has nothing but free to play cards that they've gotten. Right. Like, so it's one of those things where I don't see it as far as it being a negative type style in that. I think it's fine. Now, I think she's a meme card and they made her a meme card for a very specific reason and things like that. So I think she's fine. You know, have fun if you want to play her. And if you're going to farm like that, like, what are you doing? Just
Yeah.
Like,
it's
you're
just
still not keeping
unnecessary.
up with the giant whales anyway, so.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of your computer's resources. It's a waste of your effort and energy. And I'm 1,000% in agreement there. Where, look, she's meant to just be something fun and random to play. She's not competitive in any way, shape, or form. Nor do I think she's meant to be.
Hey. She did win me a tournament, beating a certain person by playing some of the best plays, and won 2 rounds of a tournament.
2 rounds out of how many potential if it went all the way?
4. So
all the way?
she got me halfway there. So, but no, I agree with you. She's not competitive. You have to build a deck. Like, and the thing is, the Agatha decks that are built properly aren't terrible. The ones that are discarding her. So essentially, you're just not playing her for the first 2 or 3 turns, right? And then she gets discarded and or played, and it's a giant number. So I think that, especially over time with new cards coming out, there's potential that she could get more competitive. But for the average player, the average deck that's built with her, it's just kind of meme it up, see what she plays, cross your fingers, and hope she doesn't continually play your people into death's domain.
Again and again and again. Yes. It's fun to kind of sit back and watch the chaos, but that's a little bit of the sadistic side of Marvel Snap, is just kind of let it happen and you just, enjoy the view. But at the same time, it's meant to be a strategic game. It's meant to have control. It's meant to have, you want to play the cards that you want to play. It's one thing when it's ego and it happens 0.25 or whatever it is % of the time, or 1% of the time that it appears, and then you just double snap and it's just have fun and let it happen. No matter what, if you're climbing, you always snap. It doesn't matter. I just do it. I've definitely taken many an 8 cube loss. I have gone down with the ship knowing that I've lost by turn 4. Didn't matter. Lost 8 cubes because it's fun. It's just something community wise that's fun. But then there's the other aspect of it where, just like how we don't like things like Krakoa, where it plays the cards for you, or there's too many negative pieces like District X, those can be frustrating. Agatha, you're making the choice. It's not the fact of, I'm bringing in a hit monkey deck and now Ego's going to try to play that crap. No, it's more along the lines of, I'm telling you, I'm going to have fun with this. So here you go. This is what we're doing here,
Unless you hit Hub, and Hub's like, here, you can have an Agatha. It's happened a couple times. And I'm like, this is so annoying.
Or what do you call the Professor X one?
The District X or the mansion. No, because I would just put
the
it
X's
in the
mansion.
play.
Yeah, the mansion.
I've had play though.
I've had that pop out. I've also had I've played down a beast in a bounce deck on there simultaneously, not remembering, oh crap, it's turn 3, and then bounced an Agatha into my hand. Like, that's always a lot of fun. I've had it on Mindscape where it gets swapped into my hand and then she just plays herself and it's random. Meanwhile, I just gave them a Shang-Chi and now I'm just kind of SOL. There's a lot of fun plays with Agatha, but you know what you're walking into. She's not meta. She's not meta, nor will she be in any way, shape, or form, unless if they find some weird way to do that. But I can't foresee that. She's not a Stature. She's not meta. But Stature deserves her own kind of conversation, because when she dropped as a Series 5 card, a lot of people said, okay. And that's it. They just kind of shrugged on her and said, it's a 5/7. Sure. If the opponent discards a hand, it discards a card, she goes down to a 1 cost. And there's only 2 cards in the game that do that. It's Black Bolt and Moon Knight. Those are the only 2 activators to get the Stature down to low. And this is during the time of the Shuri Red Skull meta. So there wasn't a lot of want to play Black Bolt, because back then, what would you rather do? Play Black Bolt or play Red Skull? And all of the adjustments to Red Skull and then eventually Shuri, like, there was never any want, need, or reason to do so. Now, those things have changed and the deck has changed and people are re-adventuring into different cards, and Stature all of a sudden has made a reappearance. and now is in one of the most successful decks in the game with Black Bolt as a potential double up card, or a Taskmaster turn 5 card, or as a She-Hulk variation card. There's so many decks now. Is it exclusively due to the Red Skull changes that Stature has decided to emerge in this game, or were we all just that sleeping on her, kind of like we did with Thanos, and now our eyes are just completely wide open because she's dropped?
Yeah. So earlier when you said the rise of a card, I mean, I was thinking the rise of Silver Surfer, but again, that's not right. That's the movie. So the rise of Stature coming in, it's definitely one of those things where I think she's a slept-on card because nobody wanted to spend tokens on her. Now that she's dropped down, more people are getting her, more people are experimenting with her. And honestly, I think it's just there's a lot of nuances in the game, whether it's locations or whatever, that are making you discard cards, and then she ends up being so good because of her effect. And for the people that don't know Stature's effect, literally if your opponent discards a card at any time in the game, she stays a 1/7. And I think that that's the really important piece of her card, right? Miles, on the other hand, is if a card moves the turn before, then he's costed down. But then the following turn, he goes right back up. Whereas I think that that's what makes her a little bit better in that sense, because you can play some of these decks like a Lockjaw deck or whatever that can get Black Bolt out early. And because you can get him out early, it gives you Stature as a turn, 5 play, a turn 6 play at a discounted cost. 1/7 is really good. 5/7, not so good. So I think it's one of those cards that have kind of just started to come into the meta because of the fact that we've got these curves. And again, some of the decks I'm seeing are Lockjaw specific, and you have things like Jeff in them to boost up a Miles. You have Black Bolt to boost up a Stature, and you have all these little nuances of cards in the deck. Now, I will also say, in my opinion, some of these decks look better than they are because your opponents don't know what you're doing. Opponents have not seen Black Bolt. Opponents don't true. It's like if you look at some of these decks, it's like, I'm going to take these 12 cards and put them together. And on paper, nothing looks like it goes together. It's not a Patriot deck. It's not, an ongoing or a discard specific deck. It's just this random hodgepodge of cards, and you're always having to predict what could come next. And I think that that's what really makes Stature good at the moment, is she's not in a discard only deck. And I think if she was in that deck that we originally thought, right, just like you mentioned Thanos, when we saw her, we were like, oh, she's going in this Hela deck, right? Because we're gonna use Moon Knight, or we're gonna use Black Bolt. And now we're like, no, she's just kind of stuck in with the Black Bolt. And if you get her as a 1/7, you get her. If not, she's in your hand. She's fine.
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of different fun variations on the deck too. As you said, you mentioned the Miles Morales piece, and he's making another rise again for the same reason, taking advantage of the 1/5 stat line later on in the game. Specifically with her, though, because of Shuri, knowing that there is a solid, okay, well, I didn't get the discard, but I can still get this down as a 14 power card. That's got a lot of strength in and of itself. The preferred play right now by a lot of people is to do a hybrid variation, one that has Stature and one that has Vision. That way you can move around that 14 power as needed. That's a very, very solid deck. There's a lot of variations that are trying to capitalize on Stature, Black Bolt, and then what we'll just label as blank. It's just throw that duo into something else that scales, whether it be low cost or double power. You're seeing a very, very large rise in this card, which I'm curious to see how people choose to handle this once they start recognizing the pattern. They start seeing wait a minute, you just moved a card. You put down a Jeff the Babyland Shark, or you put down a Nightcrawler, and you just moved and there's Miles. Is that the foreshadowing of, aha, here it comes. Here comes the Stature, all of a sudden you got Enchantress early rather than on turn 6. Okay, am I about to get Taskmastered again? Because we're seeing that combo also come back into light. There's a lot that this duo is doing that's making it incredibly versatile, because it can plug into any deck as a strong 2-card combo for a total of 5 power on the final 5 out of the last 11 power, and you're getting 15 out of that. That's a 5-15 in total. That's a pretty damn good combo in the last 2 turns of the game. So I don't think, keyword on this, I don't think she's a problem yet, but she's one to watch. Just be on the lookout. Enjoy her. Right now, she has Stature and Black Bolt. If you play them, they have the 2 highest win percentages in the game right now. If you play them, which is just nuts, in my opinion, that quickly all of a sudden she's more relevant. And Black Bolt, which used to be one of the most snarked on cards in the game, is now one of the most meta cards in the game. And it just goes to show you how many different things can change in the blink of an eye, how one card can come to rise out of nothing, out of the ashes. And I think Stature's a great card. And as she continues to drop, we may have to keep an eye on her, because other things may end up rising because of it. So just keep an eye out. Keep an eye out on the Stature Black Bolt situation. I'm not calling for nerfs. I'm just saying watch it.
I think it's one of those cards where she's decent. I'm not saying she's OP or anything like that, because I think the other side of this is a lot of the people that are using this combo, or at least started using this combo, are very talented streamers or content creators. And so you also have a little bit of a skewed on, win percentage and things like that, because you also have a very talented person behind the phone or keyboard. But it's definitely one of those now. Well, but
the numbers
don't
lie. Look at the amount of people playing the deck and still doing well with it.
And now it's started to get out there. So there's a lot of people playing it to where it's still a very good deck. I think the other side of it is, within that deck, the deck itself is a good created deck. So that's where I'm getting at, is it wasn't just random people being like, oh, I got Stature at 4, let me just go through and Black Bolt Stature. If you look at these decks, even though they look like a hodgepodge deck, they have powerful cards. Like you mentioned, Jeff, being able to move Jeff and get a free Miles, that's 3 energy for, what is that, 7 or 8 power? Like you have a lot of these, like, as long as things line up correctly, you can destroy people with it. And so I think that that's the other side of it. Just like the Thanos deck that was doing so well, Lockjaw is one of those enablers. And I think the Lockjaw nerf was right where it needs to be. You're not able to do multiple things anymore. But it's one of those things where we're still seeing Lockjaw being a nice card. It's enabling this deck as well, because you can potentially get that Black Bolt out earlier. So all in all, I think it's one of those cards that is really, really good and can only get better. Because if you think about it, let's say they release a 4-drop, right? Because we have Moon Knight at 3, we have Black Bolt at 5. They can release a 4-drop that now makes your opponent discard, and she's even better. So, not saying that that's because we haven't seen anything spoiled like that, but she can only go up from here. And I agree with you on the fact that she doesn't need a nerf. I think at this point, you let them be. We see where they are a little bit later, because we're also in a weird and good testing phase of the meta right now. People are playing all kinds of stuff. And I think that that's where it needs to be. I don't feel like there's any particular deck that is the quote unquote best deck right now. Some people may say that's Patriot, but I disagree.
Yeah, not anymore.
I think it's a good deck. Yeah, I think it's a good deck, but I don't think it's the best, which kind of leads us into that other potential sleepers that may be out there, just like Stature.
Yeah, I think Stature, this happened with Thanos, like we talked about earlier. I think that we need to kind of look at the future, a little bit here. I've got a couple of cards. I know you've got a couple of cards as well that I think we're all sleeping on just a tad, and we need to reinvest into, especially with the upcoming next 2 months of metas. So I'll say my 3, and then I'll let you say your 3. The 3 I'm looking at in particular are Captain America, Okoye, and Elektra. Now, Elektra in particular, I know a lot of people have been saying, you know, Elektra is going to be really important because of Nebula, etc. I think in general, we need to look at Elektra because Elektra is doing exactly what Killmonger does, right? It destroys a 1-cost card, but it's only a 1-cost. And at least personally...
Well, it also does 1 compared to...
But that's what let me get to my point, damn it. Like, that's my point. If you're the opponent... Sorry, if you're looking at your opponent and you're trying to destroy a card, more often than not, you're trying to destroy one specific card. You're trying to destroy the Ebony Maw or the Titania or the, you know, whatever it may be. Or the Nightcrawler or the whatever. There's one card you're typically looking at to destroy for 1 cost. It's not a billion of them. If you're doing that, it's because you're running a death stack. If you're doing a defensive play, Elektra gives you great return. And I think that she's worthwhile. Same thing for Okoye. I think Okoye is another one that we need to kind of reinvest into because of what's coming up next month with Move. And cards that will scale as they move, I think will also bring more light back into Okoye once again. And I think that people forget the facts that, okay, it's going to give +1 power to every card in your deck. You play her out on turn 2, and then you draw 4 cards that now have a buff up. If you play all 4 of those cards, that's making her value go from 2/2, which is what her stat line is, to basically a 2/6, which can scale even higher with other effects, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm big on Okoye right now on trying to see where she's going to fit in the upcoming couple of weeks of metas. And then, as I said, the last one for me is Captain America, because Captain America is just a solid, consistent 3/6. He's a 3/3 technically, but gives +1 to the other cards at the location. And we're in a game mode right now. We're in a meta right now that it really is quite reliant to put 4 cards in a lane. So a 3/6 stat line is incredibly good. You can ramp it up. Obviously, it's an ongoing. You can do it with, you know, a bunch of other combos like Iron Man and Onslaught and Spectrum and yada, yada, yada. So there's ways to make that even better. I just think that he's worth re-looking at because a lot of cards will continue to benefit from that. So those are my 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I like the 3 choices there. Elektra, I'm low on the fence with, but I get what you're saying compared to a Killmonger. And I think a lot of people make that argument, right? Killmonger's better because you kill all. But the other side of it is, to kind of point that out, is if Khazar, Shanna, and some of those cards start to make their rise, you may not want to kill all the 1-drops, right? Like on your side, because you may be playing Shanna and you want to use Elektra, so you're only targeting on their side. So I get that. 1 power, take care of one of their cards, or 1 energy, take care of one of their cards could definitely benefit you there. You know, when it comes from my side, talking about 1-drops, Maria Hill is where I like to start, because I think if we think about all of the amazing 1-drops that we're going to have in this game, Kitty Pryde, Nebula, Sunspot, right? Yes, maybe Elektra. Like I've had that happen before. Maria Hill gives me an Elektra and now I can snipe somebody. It's definitely one of those things where I think Maria Hill is a 100% a slept-on card. She was better when we had Quinjet and they were free coming back in your hand, but that's not the case anymore. They're still going to cost 1, but I think Maria Hill is definitely a slept-on card. Her stats are great, 2/3, you know, not too overpowered or anything like that, but to give you a 1-drop in your hand and a 1-drop that maybe, especially with the amount of 1-drops we're getting that are good. I mean, we're about to get Howard the Duck as well, which could also work with what you're doing in your deck, or at least just giving you knowledge, which is always a good thing when it comes to these kind of games. So I think Maria Hill is definitely one of those over the next couple of weeks you should keep an eye on, you should check out, experiment with. Originally, when she came out, there wasn't a lot of great 1-drops. You kind of always just wanted to get Sunspot. But now with all of these new 1-drops, I think she's going to get good and, you know, and get even better because we have other cards like Ghost, didn't even mention her. So yeah, definitely Maria Hill. True. Secondly, my second card is QUAKE. So with Nebula, becoming a big thing. With
this
Nebula,
makes me so happy for so many reasons.
It's a good, like, I've never really liked Quake. Now I still think that Quake eventually shouldn't matter where she goes, right? Because right now she has to be in the center lane, right?
Yeah.
So I think they need to take that away from her at some point to where you can play her anywhere. I don't like limitations because you may get a location that you just can't play into in the middle lane. So
right.
I think her power should be able to be activated from anywhere. But with that being said, people playing Nebula right now are trying to put her in locked up lanes like Storm's lane, a flooded lane or whatever. Quake's gonna be able to open that back up. So I think it's one of those things where Quake is going to start to become better, especially with cards like Kitty Pryde coming, which is going to come back to your hand every turn. So the fact that they're going to have to replay her, and now you can be like, no, you can't play her there anymore because I'm moving the lanes around, and now the flooded lanes over there, or Sanctum Sanctorum, or whatever location that won't let them play into it, Kiln. You're going to be able to move some stuff around. So I like Quake as being a sleeper. Now, is she going to be OP or anything like that? No, she's more of a tech card. But I think with the way we're starting to see some of the tech go, being able to move those locations around could be pretty huge with the way people want to kind of hide in certain lanes.
Yeah. This makes me happy.
So
this pick, I'm not going to lie.
So
it's a good one.
We'll see what comes out of that. And then the last one, yeah, she's not necessarily quote unquote slept on, but I'm going to say Enchantress. She just got a huge buff. And with what we're going to be seeing in the future, in the next few weeks, we've got a couple ongoing cards coming out, a couple big ongoing cards going out, plus the buff to Luke Cage. So you're going to need to be able to deal with Luke Cage so that the board is not one-sided. So if you're not playing Luke Cage, you probably need to be playing Enchantress to get rid of their Luke Cage. So again, probably not super slept on. Definitely starting to show up in a lot of decks here and there. She's always kind of been around on the outskirts of decks, but definitely want to keep her in mind as the meta shifts over the next couple weeks, and definitely with things like Living Tribunal decks coming out in a few weeks. Like, she's going to be the card that's going to be everywhere in the meta. So
yeah, she's going to continue to rise, and she should not be forgotten. I 100% agree. She now has a very, very solid stat line at 4/6 due to the last OTA change. I think that Enchantress is going to become about as important as Luke Cage. Where as you're deck building, there are certain cards, like right now, when you think about a deck, one of the first cards you're going to reach for is Shang-Chi. I think every single deck is now only going to be based around 6 cards, because you constantly have to think about having, okay, first things I need, I'm building a brand new deck. What do I got to bring? Luke Cage, yes. Enchantress, yes. Shang-Chi, yes. And then 3 more mandatory for
some
your
Galactus
deck style.
Answer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Debris, sure, why not? Just like some Galactus answer.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Enchantress is kind of that for null, but anyway, like, I think the deck building style is going to change over the next couple of weeks as we head into the high evolutionary era, which is very much so our fault, because all of us have been hyped on it since it was data mined, and everybody's been saying save up for high evolutionary stuff. So just be ready. Start thinking of your counter decks now, or start thinking of the best high evolutionary deck that's going to break the meta, because it's going to be oh my gosh, I can't even find English today. It will be able to survive even against a counter deck. And when that happens, we'll be sure to be talking about it here too. I'm going to end real fast for us here on my deck of the week. I kind of hinted at it a little bit earlier through the conversation. I'm calling this the Nebulector. There's a couple of variations that I've been working with. This is a second version of it, not the one I did 100 games with, because I took out Dracula out of that old deck. The Nebulector 2, if you will, is Nebula, Morbius, the Collector, Wolverine, Sentinel, Swarm, Colleen Wing, Lady Sif, Moon Girl, MODOK, Apocalypse, and America Chavez. It's basically taking advantage of your ramp cards in Morbius and Collector very effectively, MODOK getting rid of a whole bunch of stuff, and then you have choice at the end of the game on either America Chavez for security or a ramped up Apocalypse because you got those cards to discard. All of the swarms being dropped on the final turn is always a huge win. And Collector's regularly at 2/5, which is a great stat line. Wolverine's even in this deck just to give a little extra insurance, but the Sentinel was what I put in instead of the Dracula, and that really, really ended up being consistent for the ramping of the Collector, who I was playing a lot. So this is a variation on this deck. You could put in Swordmaster, you could swap out a couple of cards here and there, but the basis of the deck is very strong with Nebula. And I think that with the changes to Collector now as a 2/2, I think this may have even more chance to be really, really powerful. So that's my Nebula 2.0. 2.0. I wanted to bring something that's semi-relevant, Nebula, Collector. It all makes sense right now.
Yep.
But as we head into next week with Iron Lad and a whole bunch of tourneys going on, we got a lot to look forward to. So, Default Dan, is there anything you want to say before we head on out, good sir?
No, man. I like the deck you brought. I also think it's more relevant right now because for some reason Cosmo has disappeared. So we'll see. I know.
I was thinking about that.
When Cosmo comes back. But
I know people forgot that Cosmo exists.
Yeah, but definitely like this, and again, super excited. We'll have another Wednesday Night Snap next week. Like you mentioned, we've got tournaments going on everywhere. We've got the Snap.fan Open, not this weekend, but next weekend. So tons of awesome stuff happening in the community, in the stuff. So make sure if you're watching this, on YouTube, leave a comment down below. What's your deck of choice right now? What's your sleeper card that people just haven't figured out yet? Maybe it's Rescue because, guest over here wants her to go down and be insanely big. But anyway, having fun with Snap right now, enjoying
if you're
seeing
on YouTube,
everything.
You get an exclusive preview of a deck I'm working on that features Rescue. If you're on audio, well, now you got to go take a look at the YouTube video. Look in the last few minutes. So, teaser. All right. I'm working on that for that exact reason. All right. Default Dan, love you, brother. Thank you so much for doing this super early in the morning with me. So it's recording, it's posting, it's all of the above all at the same time. Because as all of you know who are listening and watching right now, we love this damn game. This is the Snapback Podcast where you snap and we snap back. Thank you so much for joining me once again, Default Dan. Once again, my name is ItsGuestGaming. Come join us both on snap.fan at the twitch.tv website. You can find us each at our own respective usernames, which you can see on screen or in the descriptions in the podcast or YouTube video down below. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your morning. Thank you so much.
Y'all take it easy.
What, you like pause like you forgot your own outro? You're like, I'm on the spot here.
I forgot that I was doing an outro.
You do it every night.